Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name's Luke Pace, and welcome back to everyone who's already a subscriber to the channel. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe so you can see more great interviews, including the one coming at you right now. A professional MMA fighter who's young for where he is in his career, 24 years old, 3-1 as a pro. Just 2 days ago, had a great ground and pound third round finish to advance to 3-1 in his professional career. Welcome to the show, back to the show since he's already been on a couple times. Asher, Shock and Rock, Frederick, Asher, welcome back.
Hey Luke, thanks for having me, man. I'm privileged to be able to hop on the MMA Fancast. It's always fun doing these things.
Well, you are so kind, and I really appreciate you being on the show. Just, 48 hours removed from a great win for you. You were fighting for the Ohio Combat League and took on a guy with more experience than you. He was coming into his 9th pro fight. You were entering into your 4th pro fight, so double the experience. Let's go round by round against Marcus Johnson. Let's start off with the first round. How did things go? What did you feel like in there against Johnson?
The first round, I had a little bit of trouble, implementing my game plan. I took a little bit of damage with the leg kicks. He did a really good job of just kind of catching me, just looking and paying attention because he was moving really weird.
Okay.
And then the second round, I was able to, start implementing the grappling, close the distance, hit him a bunch, and just grind him down. And then the third round ended up coming, and he just broke mentally from me just constantly mat returning him, getting in on the hips, and just kneeing his body from having back control and a wrist ride, not a wrist ride, a handcuff grip, and just constantly kneeing him in the ribs and hammer fisting him to the side of the head, and then popping little uppercuts and elbows in as well.
And that's the ground and pound finish that they document. Okay, great. And so talk a little bit about, because I know you said the first round you were figuring things out. Talk a little bit about how you are as a professional fighter now, how you are at adjusting your fight plan on the fly, particularly between rounds. Like, do you think that's a skill you need to have as a professional fighter? And how do you think that skill is growing here in your 4th fight, being able to kind of develop not only your technical skills, but also your adjustment skills?
Being able to adjust in a fight is super important, and you have to be coachable. If you're not coachable, you're just going to keep sticking to the game plan. And it's always good to be able to listen to your coaches and hear what they're saying, because if you can't do that, you're not going to be able to make those adjustments in between rounds when they're feeding you, because they're seeing different things from the outside than you are. You may think, oh, I'm not getting hit. But it's like in a fight, sometimes it's like you're getting hit. You don't realize it because it's not significant and you don't think it looks bad. But to your corner, the judges, it looks bad. You're getting hit. And having your coach tell you, hey, let's pick up on this, let's stay away from this, and let's just keep applying pressure. And if you can stay calm, listen to that, and then do exactly what they told you in between rounds, generally things will work out.
Yeah,
That's the way I look at it.
and you just described, I think, the perfect, or at least a good balance of interplay between the athlete in the cage, who at the end of the day is responsible for whatever you do, right? Good or bad, you're the
Yeah.
one. But also that interplay between the coaches being able to give you feedback from that outside perspective, not only knowing the skills that you have and what they can guide you in, but you brought up a great point, and having cornered kickboxing, Muay Thai, and MMA quite a bit, at least in the past. Yeah, there were times I'd tell fighters exactly what you're talking about, and they'd have to kind of trust me that, hey, this is looking really good. Keep doing this, even if they're like, wait, it doesn't feel good what they're doing. It's like, well, it's working. Keep it up. Or to your point, a strike looking like it's doing more damage than it is, like all that you said, it goes a long way. And to be able to take out a very tough, experienced pro really says a lot about you. And you're fighting at flyweight. I know when I saw you fight as an amateur, you were at bantamweight. I personally think flyweight is if you can make the cut and you physically feel good there, I mean, you're an impressive specimen for flyweight. What do you think about that division, or is that something that you're going to work out of? I just saw you seem to weigh in okay. Just curious what your thoughts are about flyweight, and if this is going to be your division to kind of move up in as you progress.
Yeah, flyweight's my permanent home for the time being. I think that I have the skills, the size, and everything to actually make an impact in the flyweight division on the regional scene and in the UFC.
Yeah, that I certainly think that's great as long as that's going along with what working for you. You're still training out of the Ronin Training Center in Ohio. How's that going for you? How long have you been at Ronin, and what's it like having them in your corner, since we already talked a little bit about your corner work?
I've been at Ronin for about, I think, 4 years, maybe 5 years now. Having Josh in my corner is super great. He's an old school guy, but he's mod. I mean, he's coached so many fighters like Dan Spahn, Travis Davis. He has a little bit of experience with Vanessa Dermalopoulos. She's in the UFC. But I mean, his knowledge is so vast, and his strategies are just. It's He's the coach that you need to help you get to the next level.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm looking through on Tapology. Tapology is really great. They even categorize what fighters are known to fight out of a certain gym. Obviously, you're one of their notable pros. But yeah, I can see the coaches you were talking about. A lot of great high level talent coming out of your gym, and really perfect for you're 24 now. So if you've been with them 5 years, that's since you were a teenager. So I mean, that's just great developmental time. Before we get to the question of where you see yourself going from now, you talked a little bit about growing on the regional scene and then wanting to, potentially go up against people in the UFC. Let's talk about your sponsors, because you're a professional. And when I met you, you were a really, really good amateur. And there's even amateurs that train like professionals that, maybe work part time, train a lot, have sponsors. So who are the organizations or people that sponsor you that are really helping you as you grow? You're 4 fights into your pro fight. And I always say, like, for pros, it's probably the first five is sort of like how you doing when you first get started. You're 3-1. So if you advance to 4-1, that's really good. That's right on the border of, if you're 5-1, 6-1, that's right on the border of a Dana White Contender Series type fight. And then I always say, like, so your first five kind of gets it started. Your next five is really going to decide whether or not you go to Dana White or UFC, or if there's a couple too many losses, you kind of then develop more on the regional scene, which can be fine. And then we see people in their next 5 fights, maybe at that point they're 7-3, and they can make a push in their next five. So I always kind of think in fives as far as what you're able to accomplish in your career. But before we get to that, who are your sponsors? Who are the people that you need to thank? Here you are now coming out of your fourth pro fight.
I need to just thank first and foremost the Lord Jesus Christ, and for giving me the ability to be able to fight and just do everything with my life. But my sponsor specifically, I'd like to thank Second Nature Supplements. They supply me with pre-workout, protein powder, BCAAs, Turp House Farms. They supply me with CBD and gummies and things of that nature, oils. Let me think who else. Altercation Fight Gear. They make all of my t-shirts, hoodies, and Don, who owns Altercation Fight Gears, he also does all the logos that I put on my shorts. Bijonari, they're a big jiu-jitsu company. They sponsor me as well with fight gear. And that's really it, man.
Well, that certainly sounds great, particularly your identity in Christ being the most important, because that's going to matter whether or not you're 50, whether or not you're fighting, not fighting, wherever you are in your life. It's not all about performance. Your job right now is driven by performance because you're a professional MMA fighter, but your identity in Christ is most important spiritually. So always great to hear that. And then also those sponsors, for the people that are already sponsoring you, that's incredible. I say one of the advantages that I have of doing MMA Fancast is be able to encourage people that might be watching this that have a small business or want to support fighters, to know that you work out the details with the fighter. And so I always tell somebody that's kind of thinking about, oh, well, maybe I want to sponsor a fighter. Talk to a fighter about what you're thinking. Most fighters are particularly early in their career, are very open. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's gear, like you mentioned. Sometimes it's if you have a restaurant, sometimes it's, oh, the fighter can come when they want and eat for free. I mean, there's really a lot of variety in sponsorships. Fighters can really benefit from any type of sponsorship it might be. So always hit up Asher or anybody else that you see on MMA Fancast or really anywhere else, and kind of lead with what you're thinking. And then, of course, the fighter or the manager can say, oh, we don't really do that, or we're looking for this. Have that discussion. I think a lot of times people think that there's hard and fast rules in sponsorship. There's really not. A lot of it is person to person, and kind of as it goes and as it develops. Sometimes it's fight by fight, sometimes it's by year. Just have to talk to the fighter. So I appreciate you talking about that. Now let's get to a little bit of what you see in your future, both in the year of 2024 and then also going forward. So let's first talk about 2024. Since we're just 2 months in, are you looking to fight how many more times? What do you kind of want out of yourself in 2024?
In 2024, I'm looking to fight at least 3 more times.
Mhm.
The cut to 125 is a hard cut,
Yeah.
but with the proper time in between fights, I can make it and be healthy. So I'm planning on fighting 3 more times this year. And then after this year, um, with everything going smoothly, I'll be 6-1, maybe 5-1. And I can, maybe get a contender series shot next year. Or if I got to keep fighting people on the regional scene, keep fighting people on the regional scene, keep making a splash, build my resume, and eventually make a splash into the UFC, Bellator, or even if the PFL ends up having a flyweight division or one championship as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's wide open. We had kind of already talked about how, when you get past that first 5 or 6 fights, that's when things, depending on how you're doing, goes a long way. I had Dylan Butka, talked to Dylan Butka, and he's training out of Ohio Demolition Team, I believe, and he's now in the UFC. But he did a regional fight, and then I think it was 10 days later he was fighting on the Contender Series. Contender Series usually runs in the summertime. The fact that you're now 3-1, you get to that 5, 6-1 range. Maybe you're 6-1 at the end of this year, which would be 3 more fights, which is doable. And then you get one fight like you did now, even 2 fights, a January, February, and April card. And then because it appears from the outside, because I certainly don't have an insight to Dana White, that they kind of already sort of know some of the people they want on the Contender Series. You might become one of those people if you're 7-1, 6-1. And sometimes, like in Dylan Butka's case, because he ended up fighting a guy who was a stud out of South Africa that the UFC had already brought over to Vegas, and we're kind of committed to him being on the Dana White Contender Series as part of sort of their international push. And then that opponent for the South African guy got hurt. So 10 days out, they needed a person. So sometimes the best ability is availability, as they say. So it certainly goes a long way to what to kind of to what you have to say. Now, I've been snooping around on Tapology, like I said, and how much training do you do with an amateur? You had an incredible amateur career. Is Mad Max Metzger still training with you, and how much you train with him? I'm seeing that he's 7-0, a little bit heavier than you. But is he somebody that's still out of that gym, and do you train a lot with him? He looks like somebody that's going to be going pro any moment, as I was looking down through the Ronin Training Center list.
Yeah, yeah, I train with Max a lot actually. I mean, we're in this room together all the time. We mostly just do drilling, not a lot of sparring, just because he walks at 180, 190, and I'm maxing out like at 150, 155
Gotcha.
at my heaviest.
Gotcha. Well, it's just cool. I'd love to have him on the show in the future. I've interviewed you. I like getting connected to other gyms. Ronin obviously is a great gym. Sometimes that's easier for me to kind of follow a gym with the fighters they're producing. You're the first out of the gym. So very, very cool. You've laid out your plan for next year and kind of how it would potentially go up the levels. This close, 2 days after a fight, You mentioned the weight cut makes sense that you're being smart and intelligent about your weight cut. What do you enjoy doing before you get in another camp? Obviously, you're training all the time, but when you're up at that 145, 150, what are the types of stuff you enjoy doing prior to getting back into a camp and into a cut?
Honestly, man, I really like to eat. I like to pig out a little bit and eat, but at the same time, I still go when I train. That's what I love to do. I mean, I'm a martial artist for life. I'm not just a fighter. That and a lot of people you see, the people who want to be good or want to be great, like myself or like Lucas Seibert and people
Mhm,
like that. We're constantly always training, whether we have a fight or not.
mhm.
And during fights, you have to focus specifically on, what you're good at and implementing your game plan. In between fights, you can slack on your diet, you can pig out, party a little bit, but you still train, but you're training and learning new things or working on things that you're not so good at.
Mm. Makes sense. It's a great mindset to have. You mentioned Lucas the Sniper Siebert, who originally trained out of Ohio briefly at the Immortal. No, yeah, Immortal and
Yeah.
Hammer, I think. Hammer and Mortal, and then came over to Stout. And yeah, you guys are both young. I think you're both 24, and it really goes well. You're a great example of somebody that had a great amateur career of 7-2. Siebert was 5-0, so really making the most of your amateur career. Now 3-1, he's 1-0, having just fought for 247. It's kind of cool that you guys are different weight classes and stuff, but it's kind of cool. Although who knows, because he fights at 35 and you might fight at 35, so you never know if you guys will eventually get matched up. But it's kind of cool that just like in football or baseball or basketball, fighting's the same way where you end up kind of having fighters that are sort of in your same class, so to speak, in your same age range, as far as when you're active. And they end up being the champions around you, and they end up being the fighters that you'll see at various events and things like that. That's what sometimes people talk about. Even if you never fight somebody, you end up kind of coming up together and maybe making the national scene together, stuff like that, which is pretty cool. Well, I always appreciate you jumping on. It's always great when I can have a fighter on off a win short after a win, like you've only been 2 days, because it kind of keeps it fresh in your mind. So thanks for taking time. You have a incredible future ahead of you. I want to continue to follow you. And for anybody training out of the Ronin Training Center, I mentioned Max, but really anybody that's got a fight coming up that's kind of at that amateur elite into pro, I'd love to invite you on. Just message me, Luke Payson, on Facebook. I check my messages. Friend me first, that way I can see that. But anyhow, or give your phone number to Asher and he can get in contact with me. But thanks so much, Asher, for coming on. Always honored to have you on the show. Congratulations. Enjoy eating. And I forgot to ask, what is your favorite food, favorite junk food, and favorite ice cream? There's only one ice cream answer, and it's mint chocolate chip. But but give me your like food, like an actual meal, junk food, and ice cream.
Oh, my favorite food. Dude, there's so many. Probably I want to say steak, just a nice steak.
Of course.
My favorite junk food have to be cheesecake.
Oh,
Doesn't matter the type. It could be, like a tiramisu cheesecake. It could be
mm.
strawberry cheesecake, New York swirl cheesecake, any kind of cheesecake. And what was the other one? What was the other question, my
Ice
friend?
cream. Ice
Ice
cream.
cream. You got mint chocolate chip. You got moose tracks. Whew. You got strawberry shortcake.
I see you like that. You like,
Just
yeah.
all of them.
Well, I was
But
being a
my
little, I
favorite's mint
guess,
chocolate chip. But my
mint
favorite
chocolate
will have
chip.
to
I
be
was being
mint
a little
chocolate chip.
insensitive, I guess, bringing up ice cream, but this is your window that you can enjoy ice cream because you wave goodbye to ice cream anytime you start a camp. So, uh, but yeah, I'm a mint chocolate chip guy. All those sound good. I also like black raspberry, that purple ice
Oh,
cream.
black, yeah.
Black raspberry is really good. I mean, it's not one people often talk about, but it's one that every time I eat, I'm like, man, that was good. But anyhow, thanks so much for coming on. I was wrapping up before I realized that I forgot to ask you the all important questions about food, because this is kind of your enjoy food time. And I think you gave great recommendation for fighters coming up. If you are sort of between camps, still train. It doesn't mean maybe you're eating more, maybe you're a little heavier, like you were talking about. And I think there's even an advantage to being able to train at 155, like you said, or 150, because your body's working with that muscle mass, working with that weight. Then when you cut down, when you're able to rehydrate and gain a little bit back, your body's used to moving that around. So you don't want to be too much Anthony Rumble Johnson, may he rest in peace, that kind of cut too much and then had to kind of figure out how to go from 170 to heavyweight, and then he was great at 205 and heavyweight, and you got to figure it out. So you do have to kind of find your niche. But thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, man, thank you for having me, man.
You got it anytime. You take care. Congratulations again, Asher, Shock, and Rock Frederick with Luke Payson for MMA Fancast. Take care.